Well, hi there. Warm welcome. You're watching Decoding Now, and I'm Meghna Deka. Well, why has Mark Zuckerberg's Meta suddenly said sorry to the Modi Sarkar? Is this just an apology, or is there a much bigger battle which is brewing between the governments across the globe versus big tech on the other hand? Well, we are going to decode the 3,793 crore rupee question around Meta's business, the debate over safe harbor protections, and why the governments across the world are demanding greater control over what appears to be on your social media feed. Yes, we are talking about Facebook, Insta, and WhatsApp. Who should decide what you watch? Well, from Donald Trump suing Meta after his suspension of the account, to Xi Jinping of China, his model of state control over the internet, we are going to examine the two very different approaches to regulating big tech and ask the question which affects every one of us. Who should decide what we see? What gets censored? And who ultimately controls your feed? That's the question. But first, we are going to start with the numbers. After all, it's all about the money, honey, isn't it? What do the numbers reveal? And that's the question. Well, there you have it on your screens. The money at stake is this. The number of users, and this is just Meta family that we are talking about. In India alone, the number of WhatsApp users of Meta in India is over 600 million plus. On Instagram, there are 481 million plus Indians who have accounts on Instagram. And on Facebook, there are 403 plus million Indians who are using Facebook. This is the Meta family. Amongst three of them, imagine the millions of downloads that Meta is getting in India alone, which is why Mark Zuckerberg must care. Let's also break it down in terms of money. In FY 2025, in the last financial year alone, Mark Zuckerberg and his companies earned a revenue in India of 3,793 crore rupees. This is the total revenue that they had. What is the profits? Let's continue and show you what the profits also are. In the next page, we are going to show you the profits also which are there, which is much more. This is the net profit, which is 648 crore rupees of net profit. So that was the earlier revenue, and now you have the profit there. So the Modi government's concerns with Meta, of course, go far beyond just that of compliance. In fact, officials have flagged what they see as a pattern of very serious lapses on the part of Meta. What are these lapses? Let's explain. First, of course, is the biggest red flag is that over child pornography content, which is allegedly there on the Meta platforms. And to curb the child sexual abuse material is one of the biggest concerns which has been red flags. The second one is the Prime Minister's reel which had been blocked. All of this, remember, had happened on the first Instagram reel that the Prime Minister had made. He put it out on Insta as well as on Facebook. On Facebook, this video of the Prime Minister got censored. It got blocked for a couple of hours, which is why the Indian government is asking, why is there wrongful action against a prominent account like that of the Prime Minister, to which the platform Meta had also replied saying that there was a technical error. The government of India said technical error doesn't really cover it. That is way too vague and it is not a specific. This was one of the flashpoints why today you have the Meta bosses, the global bosses of Meta descending in Delhi, because they have been summoned by the Parliamentary Standing Committee of India. They also had a meeting with the IT Minister of India. But the third flashpoint between Meta, the big tech, and the Indian government is this, which is wrongful action against prominent account, as I was telling you, but also the alleged algorithm bias. Now, this is a very interesting one, because as per sources in the government, there are security woes over undemocratic content which had been put out during the Jantar Mantar protest. Remember, there were several reels which were doing the rounds. Many of you must have seen it on Instagram, on several of your other verticals such as Facebook as well. So as per the government, they are saying that there was anti-democratic content which was being pushed out, and all of this was pushed out with great bias towards it. And it was effectively being pushed out by Meta, which was taking money for it. Those were the very serious allegations against Meta. Now, one of the biggest questions in this entire controversy is this. What exactly is the safe harbor? Why is it that Meta has been getting away with putting out content, with taking money for content, putting out and pushing out any specific content, but not being legally held liable for what's going on its platform? Well, it is all about the safe harbor. This is the legal shield in India that protects other platforms as well, including Meta, digital platforms, from being held liable for any content which has been posted by their users. What does this legal shield say? This is a legal shield for online intermediaries. There is no liability for users' online posts. Also, the immunity is only with due diligence. There is very little immunity which is otherwise provided. Only after due diligence is this immunity being given. Also, there is loss of immunity which is invited, and there could be legal action if you lose this immunity. In fact, that is the threat which was held over Meta when they were asked. In fact, they were told to remove unlawful content if they are asked, and that is one of the things which is part of the safe harbor law as well. In fact, this is something which covers and is applied to Meta, to Google, to YouTube as well. So in Meta itself, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, and you have WhatsApp. Also, it governs Google as well as YouTube, amongst others. So it is a very significant development now that top sources have told Times Now that Meta has expressed regret over a series of issues raised by the Indian government. So what really has Meta's Zuckerberg apologized for? Well, this is what sources are telling us, that Mark Zuckerberg has apologized for the child sex abuse material which was there on Instagram as well as on Facebook, which was being circulated. That Mark Zuckerberg has also said sorry over the deepfake content which is being pushed out on the Meta verticals. That Mark Zuckerberg has also said sorry, as per sources in Indian government. He has said sorry for the errors in operating platform. And the final one, and this is the most important one, that he has apologized for being paid to boost certain type of content. That essentially Meta takes the money and then pushes out a certain type of content. This is what top sources are telling Times Now. So according to the top sources, the center has also delivered one of its strongest messages to Meta yet. Remember, the Meta bosses met the IT minister. They also were summoned and they deposed before the Parliamentary Standing Committee as well. But what is it that the government told Meta? Well, as per sources, the government said, you, which is Meta, pick what people see and, of course, what people don't see. So you don't get any special legal shield. This legal shield is the Harbour law that I was telling you about. The Harbour law, which says that Meta cannot be held responsible for what the users are putting out because it is an aggregator. Now, interestingly, we must talk about global reference points as well, because at the end of it, there are different governments across the entire world which have at some point or the other sued Meta for what they have said, the opacity in the algorithms. So in the algos, is there a bias? Well, let's tell you about the China model. The China model, which everyone knows, is famous for censorship. China offers, remember, a very different kind of model to regulate internet. They don't summon people, they simply stop them, block them. Unlike most of the democracies, which China isn't, of course, Beijing has blocked many of the world's biggest social media platforms, and they've replaced them with their own ones. And their own ones are the homegrown alternatives. Essentially, you cannot use Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. You have Chinese alternatives for all of them, which means the government has direct and more control over these big tech. For example, I'm going to give you the examples. Facebook, which is of course American, has been blocked in China, and in China instead you have WeChat, which is a Chinese app. So you can't use Facebook, you can only use WeChat. Then you also have WhatsApp, which is an American, which is of course part of the Meta family, has been blocked, and instead WhatsApp's replacement WeChat is available for anyone who's Chinese, and you cannot access the others. Then you have X, formerly known as Twitter, which is, of course, again owned by American Elon Musk. You have the replacement of that, the Chinese app, which is Weibo. So if you are in China, you will not have access to any of them. Even Google, it doesn't open in China. If you go to China, Google gets disabled because it is blocked. It is banned in China. What do they have instead of Google? They have an app of their own Chinese origin, which is Baidu. So you'll use Baidu instead of using Google, and that is how the Chinese government regulates what you get to see. Is that the ideal way? Well, definitely not for democracy, because this is a larger debate over free speech that we are having and who really gets to decide what you watch. But it's not just China. In United States, which is a democracy as well, there are ways to curb and control the social media. Let's tell you how. Social media platforms, of course, have found themselves in the midst of a huge controversy, especially with the Donald Trump government. Trump has repeatedly targeted the big tech giants. He has alleged that they are anti-conservative and they are the ones who are imposing censorship. He said it despite the fact that Elon Musk, at one time, well, there is a love-hate relationship between the two of them. The flip-flops keep happening. But he has several times lashed out at X and several times definitely at Zuckerberg as well. In fact, there is a huge push for reforms to Section 330 protections which are being granted to the big tech in US. Now, what is Section 230 in US? Well, it is very similar to India's safe harbor laws, so you get the drift. So again, there as an aggregator, places such as Meta aren't held accountable for the content which is being put out by a user. Also, in US, there are challenges, US law challenges the platforms over political content as well, and some of that has happened in India as well when Prime Minister Modi's video was taken offline for a few hours and then later it was restored. In fact, Trump has even directly sued Meta. Remember, the battle between Donald Trump and Meta really goes back to the Capitol Hill moment, in the aftermath of one of the most turbulent moments of modern American politics. This followed the January 6 Capitol Hill riots, when Meta suspended Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts, saying that he was a big risk. He's the one who mobilized the people saying, come to Capitol Hill, following which there was an invasion. Many called it an invasion of the Capitol Hill, saying that the risk of further violence was too great. And right after the Capitol Hill was stormed by the supporters of Trump, his Insta and Facebook account was blocked by Mark Zuckerberg. Trump responded by suing Meta and the CEO personally, Mark Zuckerberg. This happened in July 2021. He alleged that it was unlawful censorship of his account, and he claimed that the company had silenced him unfairly. And after nearly 4 years of legal proceedings, the case finally came to an end. That was just last year in January, when Meta agreed to a $25 million settlement. Let that sink in. They paid $25 million settlement for blocking the account of Trump after Capitol Hill. However, Meta had insisted that they are going to make no admission of any wrongdoing. Did that happen in India? We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Meta's troubles are, of course, not confined to India alone. Across the world, there are several social media giant has found itself repeatedly in the crosshairs of many of these governments, of courts, over the allegations ranging from fraudulent advertisements to child safety failures and questions over transparency. Let's tell you a few of them. For example, the first one, you have the case which has been filed by the state of Santa Clara, which is in US. The allegation was that Meta had earned revenue from scam ads, that they knowingly knew that these were fraudulent and yet they continued to push it on people's timelines despite the fact that they knew that it is false. Now, this lawsuit is still pending against Meta. The second case, which has been filed by the state of New Mexico, again in America. The allegation that that state has made is that Meta had failed to protect minors. So a similar case like it has happened in India already, that there was alleged child pornography which was pushed out onto the feeds of some people, despite the fact that Meta allegedly knew that this is the content that they are pushing out, that they failed to protect the interests of minors. In this case, the state prevailed at the trial, the state won that trial, and an appeal is expected by Meta next. We are waiting for that to happen in the American courts. Now, there is another, the third one. It's not in the American courts. This one is a case which has been filed by the European Union on the whole itself against Meta. The allegation of the European Union is that you must probe into the digital regulation and the transparency issues which are arising from Meta. In this case, the investigation is still going on. So let me go across to our panelists today and ask a simple question: who really is regulating our feed? Advocate Virag Gupta is joining us. He's a cyber law expert. Lloyd Matthias is joining us, an independent director. I'm going to start with you, Lord Matthias. There are several countries, democracies, dictatorships, all of them, and everything in between, who are trying to regulate social media. At the end of it, who gets to draw the line? And is it going to be in the interest of the governments? Is it going to be in the interest of the big tech? Or should it be in the interest of people like us, the users?
I think a very, very important issue. And the short answer to your question, who gets to draw the line, I think very clearly is a sovereign authority, which the government is. So clearly, I think this is very, very, very clearly Meta's problem. The fact that they advertently or inadvertently, as they claim, pulled down a video posted on Facebook by the Prime Minister of India for 5 reasons, for five hours. Right? Now, this, they say, it was a technology glitch. And whatever the issue, I think the fact that the removal of Prime Minister Modi's post by Meta for a few hours is understandably very, very serious. Right? When you take off, a communication from an elected leader of the world's largest democracy, I think the platform's accountability severely comes under question. Right? So holding Meta accountable is appropriate. Demanding greater transparency is appropriate, and ensuring that no global platform can arbitrarily interfere with democratic communication is absolutely appropriate, right? So global technology companies cannot assume they are above laws or institutions or sovereign nations. And therefore, I'm glad that India has taken it seriously. They've demanded an apology, which I'm told Mr. Zuckerberg has offered. But I think India has to go deeper into this, and without threats of safe harbor or otherwise, ensure
but
that...
Lloyd Matthias, nowhere, at least so far, we don't have a public apology coming in from Mark Zuckerberg. And also, if he has admitted that there is going to be wrongdoing, because in one of the cases which has happened, for example, when President Trump had sued Meta, they settled. They may have paid 25 million, but they refused to say that they were at fault.
As I understand, Mr. Zuckerberg did offer an apology, but I mean, you guys will be more up to it. I heard it came sometime in the course of today, after India called Meta's authorities and promised to take off the safe harbor clause that they have, which really treats them as an intermediary and not responsible for content. I believe that's happened. But be that as it may, I think it is important. It is serious. It is important. And India has to be able to get at the bottom of this. However, all I would say is arbitrarily threatening a global platform and threatening to ban them, I think that becomes an over extreme. I think we have to negotiate from a position of strength as a sovereign country. Right. And we've got to make sure that the global platforms toe the line and act responsibly and take ownership for...
And that is the problem. Act responsibly, but where is this advice going to? To the governments? Will the governments then decide? Advocate Virag Gupta, I'm going to come across to you. Because Virag, at the end of it, many are saying there is a thin line between censorship and free speech. No one would say that child pornography is okay. But should the government decide what I get to see when it comes to a protest like Jantar Mantar?
Meghna, I am against both the things. Number one, blocking or banning, or secondly, government deciding regulating the social media platform, which may be against the Article 19 of the Constitution. However, my other speaker said about the act responsibly, and it has been defined in the law and constitution. So let us read section 79 again, which gives the protection of the safe harbor. And accordingly, Delhi High Court in August 2013 in K.N. Govindachar matter passed many important orders where Meta, that Facebook and Google were the party. And as per that order, as per IT intermediary rules of 2011, which are now amended to 2021, The first obligation of these companies is to appoint the grievance officer, nodal officer, compliance officer, and designated officers. So first important point is that lakhs of crimes are happening through these platforms, but every time police and enforcement agencies have to call the US counterparts. So why they are not giving the details of their these officers who are supposed to be appointed in India as per IT intermediary rules, and they have given in their affidavit that they have appointed. But why we have to call the US person? That is the first obligation which they are not fulfilling. Now the second obligation is that from 2016-17 onwards, these companies, three companies, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, have integrated the data and using the data without the knowledge of our customers, Indian users, and approximately 150 crore, more than population of India, are their customers in India. Now, they are using the data for commercial purposes, but they are not paying taxes in India. They are not paying GST in India. And this section 79 of the Safe Harbor does not give any exemption from the tax liability. Now, the third aspect is, which was noticed in the Delhi High Court, and accordingly letter was written by the RSS ideologue K. Govindachar to the Union Finance Minister in 2017 to recover taxes from them. In 2015, it was noticed that Google India was making money around 4.29 lakhs crore from Indian operations, but paying taxes only in 5,000 crore. Now, as per the present data, Meta global earning is some $200 billion, and Indian users are 20%.
No, but you diverted from the sole question I had asked you, which was about who gets to decide what's on our feed. You went on to a different one, and I agree with you there. I'm not disagreeing that Meta should inform, especially if our private data is being shared. That's a completely different issue that you've gone on to. Yes, private data, privacy issues are there. And the third issue that you've raised is about paying taxes. Simple answer, if since 2015 there are these red flags, why do we not have laws governing that? Whose responsibility is it? It should have been the government. The government knows, and there should be sterner laws. But coming back again, and I'm going to go across to Lloyd Matthias, because you touched upon that point right at the end of your answer. Coming back to who gets to decide, it's simple. If there is a lot of money at the end of it, and that is clearly the way out, if Mark Zuckerberg has indeed said sorry, it all comes down to the money. It doesn't really come down to the accountability, because he knows what is at stake, which is hundreds and billions of dollars is at stake, because that's how big the Indian market is. It's still not about accountability.
Meghna, I think you made a very, very valid point. I think the issue clearly for the global platforms, and I agreed with Advocate Gupta that they make a lot of money, right? So both Meta, which is the owner of Google, which is the owner of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and of course, Google, that owns YouTube. I think both of them make a lot of money monetizing Indians. Indians, our opinion, our time spent on their various social media channels. And clearly, while what you see determines what kind of feeds you get, I think the opacity in their algorithms is questionable. They do not have the business to actually block relevant content from you, specifically when it comes from a sovereign source. If the government of India is dealing with a crisis and is putting out communication, I think it is incumbent of the global digital channels to make sure that message is seen by as many Indians as possible. The government has to remain supreme. And their moderation by showing you or choosing what to show or not show is inappropriate. In the normal course of entertainment and other things, barring for law, which is not being able to show things which are not permitted by the law, I think your attention decides what is shown. If you're into stocks and trades and you're seeing more of that, that is normal. And that is acceptable. And that's how social media platforms monetize themselves. But yes, they do not have a way to actually block political content or something that the government puts out.
Well, unfortunately, we've completely run out of time, but gentlemen, appreciate you taking time out and having this very important conversation. Advocate Virag Gupta as well as Lloyd Matthias, because this is not the first and nor is this going to be the last discussion that we have about free speech versus censorship. Who really draws the Lakshman Rekha? Today, you may have Mark Zuckerberg saying he's sorry, but at the larger question is, who really should decide what you or I watch on Facebook, on Instagram, or whom we are sending messages to on WhatsApp? That is the larger question. We'll have more of these conversations. With that, I wrap up Decoding Now.